Hello everyone, welcome back to Byju's IAS. Let's start off with the daily Hindu news analysis. First up, we have an article on page 6 titled The Disintegration of the Criminal Justice System. Before we move on to the contents of the article, let's get some basic info on the criminal justice system in our country. See, the criminal justice system consists of the legislation, the law enforcement, the courts, and correction, that is the prisons that we have. And then the very first step is to prevent a crime, followed by preliminary inquiries and arrests in case any crime has been committed. Post arrests, investigations are conducted after matters are presented before the courts where trial takes place. Post the judgment, you are free to go if you are acquitted, or you are sent to a reformation facility or a prison post conviction, that is if you are held guilty. Now, let's come to the article. The author talks about various elements of this justice system and the problems therein. The issues plaguing the CJS or the criminal justice system start from the very basic definition of crime, which boils down to whatever the state says it is. If you are to be asked what exactly is a crime, it is best defined as an offense which goes beyond the personal and into the public sphere, breaking prohibitory rules or laws, to which you have legitimate punishments or sanctions which are attached, and which requires the intervention of a public authority. The author questions the dominant role of the state in the definition of what constitutes a crime in the very first place. He then moves on to the role of the police, questioning their performance by quoting the very famous, or rather infamous as we should say, the Vikas Dubey encounter. In fact, an erstwhile Supreme Court judge felt that the state's version of events made it appear as if it did not even care whether the encounter story was believed or not. That's one way of saying my way or the highway, right? Anyway, such encounters showcase this urge, this willingness to punish without condemning an accused through trial. Though the author does not list reasons, such willingness can be a result of a criminal political nexus, as was seemingly the case here, where it was alleged that the accused had corrupt links to public servants, an unholy nexus of sorts, or can even be a result of excessive media and public pressure to show results, or a poor investigation and evidence collection, where the police knows that the case may not hold ground if taken to the court because of lack of evidence. Moving on, the author gives another example from the weird order by Uttar Pradesh government, which passed a law, which I'm sure you remember, enabling the publishing of massive hoardings with the names and personal details of persons who were supposedly involved in the destruction of property caused in the riots following the anti-CAA protests. Now, this presents a classic case of holding people guilty without a proper trial. The police becomes judge, jury, and the executioner in such cases. This article also points out how police goes after cases selectively, the latest being the Hathras case, where the police was not willing to register a single case of rape and even delayed registering the case for hours despite very clear and apparent injuries, and it went on to swiftly register at least 19 cases regarding a so-called conspiracy to use the incident for political purposes to show the state in a bad light. However, it's not all policemen's fault. Let's be very clear on this. You got to understand that the implementation of the criminal justice system rests on three principal institutions, that is the police, the courts, and the prisons, with a ratio of 144 police officers per 1,000 citizens. The Indian police are operating at 30% vacancy, which is huge. In fact, it is much lower than the UN's recommended 222 police personnel per 1,000 citizens. The courts are also somewhat responsible for the tragic turn of events as far as the condition of our criminal justice system is concerned. See, the police have a pendency rate for cases at just about 15%. It's a mere 15%, but the courts have a pendency rates above 90%. We are all aware of the huge pendency in the subordinate courts, which is close to around 3.3 crores. This means around 3.3 crore cases are pending in the subordinate courts of our country. This pendency results in people losing trust and faith in our judicial system, which may result in an increase in criminality, because when you know that there is no guarantee that you will ever be punished, forget being punished anytime soon, you will tend to take liberty with the law. This disconnect, that is the gap between the occurrence of the event and the pronouncement of the judgment, gives a lot of scope to deviate from the procedure established by laws, where the executive get a free hand at determining course of events. It is here that arrests become more important than actual conviction, because considering our justice system, arrests under criminal cases is nothing short of a punishment in itself. In fact, people are usually less afraid of the court trial and conviction than they are of arrests and police custody. The courts are also to be blamed for these aspects, as they themselves show little interest in exhaustive cross-examinations and usually deny bails, forcing the accused to police custody, where on most occasions the accused is forced to accept whatever charges have been leveled against him or her. In fact, the funny aspect is that the bail should only be denied in case the accused can commit the crime again, a repeat offender of sorts, or the accused may abscond or run away, he or she is a flight risk, or if the crime is of a very severe nature, or fourthly, if the accused can tamper with the evidence. So, this has actually resulted in decline of values such as presumption of innocence and establishing truth through intensive trials. That's what this article talks about. Up next, we have on page 1 the information about Physics Nobel being awarded to Roger Penrose, Reinhard Genzel, and Andrea Ghez. Let's break it down a bit. Penrose has been awarded the prize for the discovery that black hole formation is a prediction of the general theory of relativity given by Einstein. In fact, Penrose's work has shown that black holes are a direct consequence of Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity. Interestingly, Einstein himself did not believe that black holes existed. Any which way, what are black holes? This is the first image released by the Event Horizon Telescope last year. Black holes are these super heavyweight monsters that capture everything that enters them and are basically formed when stars collapse under the weight of their own gravity, and can be defined as a space in the universe with an escape velocity so strong that even light cannot escape it. And since light cannot get out, black holes are invisible and can only be tracked with the help of a space telescope. By the way, the reason that light cannot escape is mainly because gravity inside a black hole is very strong due to the fact that a lot of matter gets squeezed into a small space. Imagine compressing an elephant into a small pebble. Gravity also shapes space and influences the passage of time. Remember Nolan's Interstellar? It is this gravity which is so great inside a black hole that it is able to bend space and even slow down time. So time does come to a standstill after all, right? But again, only with reference to the black holes. Coming back. So Penrose eventually proved that black holes exist and described them in detail way back in 1965, 10 years after Einstein died. Coming to Genzel and Ghez, they on the other hand have discovered that an invisible and extremely heavy object governs the star's orbit at the center of the Milky Way. This is the Milky Way galaxy and this is the center. This extremely heavy object has a mass equivalent to 4 million solar masses and is packed into an area about the size of our solar system and is a region called Sagittarius A star at the center of the Milky Way. In order to see through the middle of the Milky Way, Genzel and Ghez worked on developing methods and used some of the world's largest telescopes. So that's all about the Nobel Prizes for physics. Any which way, the other prizes to be announced in the coming days are for outstanding work in the fields of chemistry, literature, peace, and economics. So keep watching the space for more information on the same. Next piece of news for our discussion is on page 9, which relates to GS paper 2 with the headline, No Standoff Between the Executive and the Judiciary. The article basically refers to a reply by the Law Minister, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, to one Rajya Sabha MP in the House during 0 hour on the topic of shortage of High Court judges in our country. The Law Minister claimed that this shortage was not because of any issue between the names forwarded with the collegium and the opinion of the government, but because these shortages kept on happening because of the continuous vacancies, either due to retirement or elevation or promotion of judges to Supreme Court, or even resignations in certain cases. The important takeaway from this article is the fact that there is a shortage of judges in the High Courts. Let's understand it through some figures. The total number of seats in all the 25 High Courts that we have in our country is 1079, also called the sanctioned strength, of which around 398 to be precise and exact, are lying vacant. That's close to a whopping 35% of seats being vacant. In fact, at one point of time, few years back, 60% of judges' seats in Calcutta High Court were lying vacant. Imagine that. Add to it the fact that there are around 45 to 50 lakh cases which are pending before the high courts in the country, some of which will be challenged in the Supreme Court post-verdict, increasing the pendency of cases in the Supreme Court. What is even more interesting is that if you keenly observe the collegium required, collegium meaning the group of judges who forward names to the president for appointment. So if you keenly observe the collegium required to recommend names for the appointment of high court judges, it consists of the Chief Justice of India and two senior most Supreme Court judges. We also have to understand that these three senior most judges of our country, the CJI and the two senior most Supreme Court judges, are also performing their functions in the Supreme Court and are part of various benches. Now the question before us is when and how will and exactly how do they manage to juggle between their regular work and looking into the appointment of judges? That's a question best left for them to answer. This calls again into question the entire collegium process, which is not just opaque, there's no doubt about it, where three senior most Supreme Court judges sift through names of district judges and advocates and recommend to the president appointment of a few of them based on reasons best known to them. This is where the central executive and the judiciary will have to sit together and decide on a standard procedure to be followed with respect to elevation of judges to the high courts. In fact, the last time the executive made such an effort was by amending the constitution, the 99th Amendment Act in 2014, which went on to create a National Judicial Appointments Commission, which would be a body whose task would be to recommend names of judges to be appointed in the high courts and Supreme Court, including transfer of judges from one high court to the other. However, since the NJAC, as it was abbreviated, had a law minister as one member and some eminent persons as members as well, the Supreme Court struck it down for violation of the basic structure doctrine, the BSD. That is, it was held to be against the independence of the judiciary. We are all up for the judiciary to be strictly independent, for it's the judiciary which protects the people against the tyranny of the majority, for it's the judiciary which ensures that minorities of all kinds, linguistic, religious, sexual, so on and so forth, are ensured protection, and it's the judiciary which also keeps a check on the other two organs, the executive and the legislature. So it's high time the vacancies are filled which can relieve the courts of the pendency which it has been afflicted with since the last 70 years, because as I'm sure you're all aware and will agree that justice delayed is justice denied. Next up, we have an article on page 8 with the heading Child Should Learn Mother Tongue, says the Supreme Court. The case relates to the Andhra Pradesh government order of November 2019, which made English medium education compulsory from classes 1 to 6 in primary, upper primary and high schools under all managements from 2020-2021. Not only this, it was to be gradually extended to each further class from the consequent academic years, English being made compulsory. Though the Chief Justice, who was a part of the bench hearing the case, has decided to take up the matter next week, it's an appropriate opportunity for us to look into some provisions of our constitution pertaining to this matter. Article 350 capital A, which is a later addition to our constitution, as you may understand by the very format. If you find a capital letter attached to any article or section in any law, be sure that it is a later addition, that it has been inserted later. For example, Article 51A, fundamental duties, which were added only in 1976, or the dreaded section 124A of IPC, the section dealing with sedition, which was added 10 years after the IPC was created in 1860. So, Article 350A, which was added through the 7th Amendment Act in 1956 and is on your screen, reads, it shall be the endeavor of every state and of every local authority within the state to provide adequate facilities for instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stage of education to children belonging to linguistic minority groups. And the President may issue such directions to any state as he considers necessary or proper for securing the provisions of such facilities. Precisely, it means that no language can be imposed by the state as a medium of instruction on linguistic minorities of the state, and the center can ask the state to ensure that the linguistic minorities of the state are taught in their language at the very least. That is, the primary level of education may be imparted in their mother tongue. This facilitates better and enhanced learning, easier grasping of the basic concepts, and the linguistic minorities will also not feel that they are being left out, and will also ensure that their language is protected and the legacy continues. So in any case, we'll have to wait for the final verdict of the Supreme Court on this matter. Moving on, the next article up for our discussion is on page 10, which relates to the Gupkar Declaration. So let's just get some brief info on what this so-called Gupkar Declaration 2.0 is all about. The name Gupkar comes from the posh Srinagar locality where the National Conference leader Farooq Abdullah lives, and which was once the political nerve center of Jammu Kashmir. In fact, the first Gupkar Declaration was made on 4th of August 2019 when 8 political parties in Jammu and Kashmir had met and vowed to protect its autonomy and special status guaranteed under Article 370. Interestingly, and as you're aware, the very next day, on the 5th of August 2019, the centre revoked the special status under Article 370 and split the former state of Jammu and Kashmir into 2 union territories. It also repealed Article 35A, which had guaranteed specific rights to permanent residents of the former state. Any which way, the Gupkar 2.0, as it is called, is just a reiteration of 6 political parties of Jammu and Kashmir who signed a statement titled as Gupkar Declaration 2 to collectively fight against the abrogation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir. And for your reference, the 6 parties are the National Conference, People's Democratic Party, Indian National Congress, Jammu and Kashmir People's Conference, Communist Party of India, Marxist, and the Awami National Conference. The 6 parties have jointly stated the centre's decision to alter the special status of Jammu and Kashmir as grossly unconstitutional. Moreover, the parties have unequivocally and unanimously reiterated that there can be nothing about us without us, meaning thereby that the centre has to take the people of Jammu and Kashmir in confidence before making any changes in the constitution. Let's move on to some practice questions for prelims. First question. The Nobel Prize in Physics in 2020 was awarded for the discovery that black hole formation is a robust prediction of the general theory of relativity. Number 2, for the discovery of a supermassive compact object at the center of our galaxy. Since we've just seen the topic a couple of slides back, so I'm sure you're aware that the first statement is correct, and obviously the second statement, the discovery of a supermassive compact object at the center of our galaxy, the Sagittarius A star, was also discovered. So both the statements stand correct. The right answer is B, both 1 and 2. Moving on. Which one of the following statements is correct? Number of high courts in the country are 25. No 2 states have a common high court. The high court judges are appointed by the governor on the recommendation of a collegium consisting of Supreme Court judges. The first statement is obviously correct. The number of high courts in our country are actually 25. The second statement, no 2 states have a common high court. Now this statement is wrong. We have the Guwahati High Court, which is a common high court for Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Mizoram, and Nagaland. We also have the Bombay High Court, which is a common high court for Goa and Maharashtra, including Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. So the second statement is wrong. We can eliminate this and this. Now coming on to statement number 3. The high court judges are appointed by the governor on the recommendation of a collegium consisting of Supreme Court judges. The second part of the statement is actually right. Yes, the high court judges are appointed on the recommendation of a collegium consisting of Supreme Court judges. But the appointment is not done by the governor, but done by the president of this country. So the third statement stands incorrect, and the right answer is A, only 1. Next question. Which of the following statements is or are correct? The MPC is a statutory and institutionalized framework under the RBI Act 1934 for maintaining price stability while keeping in mind the objective of growth. The MPC determines the policy interest rate required to achieve the mandated inflation target. And number 3, the governor of RBI is ex officio chairman of MPC. So I'm sure we have on various occasions umpteen number of times discussed on the Monetary Policy Committee. We actually have this on page 14 with respect to GS paper 3 economy, where RBI's reconstituted policy panel will meet on 7th or 9th of October starting today. Any which way, all these 3 statements are correct. So the right answer is all of the above. Next question. Which one of the following statements is correct? The number of judges in Supreme Court can be increased by the Parliament by law. The number of judges in the High Court can be increased by the state government by law. Obviously, the first statement is correct. Article 124 states very clearly that the number of judges in the Supreme Court can be increased by the Parliament by law, and for that, Parliament has made a law known as the Supreme Court Number of Judges Act. By amending this law, the Parliament can increase the number of judges in the Supreme Court as it did last year by increasing the number of judges from 30 to 34. Coming to the second statement, the number of judges of high courts can be increased by the state government by law. In such cases, when the high court judges are concerned, you actually do not need any law to increase the strength of judges in the High Court. All you need is an executive order by the center and not the state. So the second statement is wrong, and hence the right answer is only 1. Towards the end, we have 2 mains practice questions. Number 1, the criminal justice system is increasingly coming under the influence of the executive. Suggest measures to bring about corrections in the same. A 250-word answer. And number 2, what are black holes? What can be the possible practical application of black holes? A 150 words answer. So that's all for today. Thank you.